these unique cabins, I feel like in the next decade are going to do so much better. And right now they're doing so well. But as the market becomes more saturated and people get into this space because the returns are so great, that I think more and more people are going to be the renting side of it. More and more people are going to be wanting to rent these like unique stays where the property itself is an experience in itself.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, now offering a $250 per unit project allowance to new clients in West Michigan. Find out more at livegreenlocal.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 327. My guest today has a vacation rental strategy that is quite unique. Instead of buying or converting residential property into vacation rentals, he prefers to build cabins. Alex Jarbo is a short-term rental developer and manager. He's also a military veteran and the founder and CEO of Sargon Investments, with a goal of building 650 cabins in the next 3 years. He's also the host of the popular YouTube channel called Alex Builds, where he teaches the ins and outs of short-term development and management. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started investing in not just vacation rentals, but cabins.
I served 4.5 years in the Marine Corps, and I had just gotten to a point in the military where I wanted to sort of just branch out and do my own thing. So I just started, this is about 5-6 years ago, no, 7 years ago. Yeah. I started just looking at different real estate models and then also just on YouTube playing around. And I had found short-term rentals through a person doing the YouTube stuff. And his properties were originally like in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. And I'd actually reached out to him directly and I'd asked him where he'd recommend investing. And he had helped me sort of figure out where to go next after the military. And we had actually decided where I live now in Asheville, North Carolina. But I'd moved I got out of the military and then I'd moved here directly the day I got out of the military to Asheville. And I had about like 8 months of expenses saved up, money saved up where I could sort of just go out and do my own thing and focus on real estate, short-term rentals. I got my real estate license about a couple months after I got here. And I did the real estate agent stuff for about 6 months. I enjoyed it, but I also wanted to do something that I saw people purchasing the short-term rentals. And that's why I moved here and that's what I wanted to do. So I aggressively started looking for property that actually could purchase with a VA loan. I was where I could sort of like the BRRRR strategy where it's like I could live in either get a duplex or a triplex, live in one of them and rent the other two out as a short-term rental. But what I found out really quickly was like most of the properties were way out of my price range. And any property that I would actually put an offer on, there'd be a crazy bidding war. And I realized that I was competing with people who also wanted to live in the property, not just use it as short-term rentals. So that happened 3 or 4 times. And then I just decided to just build my first cabin instead of purchasing. So my very first investment was actually a new development construction, custom built home. So I couldn't use the VA loan at the time. And the loan that I was getting was pretty good. I mean, they only required like 10% down, but that was still about like 15 or 16,000. So I actually decided to list my apartment that I lived in at the time on Airbnb. And I'd actually sleep in my car for 3 months just to get that money because I couldn't get it from like family members or anything or friends. So I'd like slept in the Walmart parking lot for like 3 months until I saved the money. And once we had the money, by that time I was engaged and my wife and I were about to get married. She was about to move down to Asheville. So like there was a rush to sort of bring income with what I moved here for. So I was determined to go all in on short-term rentals. We built that first cabin about 3 years ago now. And right now we broke on 10 more. So another thing I realized was like the best use of my time was just working and developing some of these bigger projects that we're working on now. So I went out, found a one-on-one mentor that specifically specializes in development. He had actually started as a short-term rental developer back, I think in the 80s, early 80s or late 80s, early 90s. I'd originally had a goal of developing 30 cabins when I first started working with him. But I realized working with him, like my goals were just like way too small, because like we were able to essentially plan out 30 cabins within like the first like 4 or 5 months of actually working together.
First of all, I want to thank you for your service to our country. You were in the Marines?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 4.5 years. I was stationed in Washington, D.C. I was part of the honor guard down there. It was a good time. Very, very humbling experience.
Thank you for that. Talk about the fact that you were bidding on properties that you wanted to turn into short-term rentals, but you kept getting outbid by homeowners. So did you find it less expensive to just build your own cabin?
At the time, yes. And then also, I'm a firm believer in designing these unique cabins that are built as short-term rentals. We still underwrite the properties as long-term rentals, say if like the county decides to randomly switch the laws one day and say no more short-term rentals. It's still in our underwriting to be able to afford that property as a long-term rental. It is and was cheaper. We just have more control over the property when we develop it ourselves, design it ourselves. Like say most properties anywhere, like say if you're not going to go out and find a 900 square foot cabin, which is what our first cabin was. It was an A-frame. Those properties tend to do, same thing with log cabins, they tend to do really well on the short-term rental sites, both Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. Yeah, it is cheaper, but at the same time, we have way more flexibility on what we actually can include in the property. And the maintenance is less because it's new construction.
And the financing on it, you said you were able to get 10% down. Was that on the total construction cost plus land acquisition?
Yes. That was prior to COVID. I don't know what it might be 20% down now. But what I recommend to people who are looking to either develop or purchase is just get if you're not investing in the town that you live in, and I forgot the exact rules of how far away you have to be from a second home, I'd recommend getting a second home loan. And then usually you could find some pretty reasonably priced loans with a second home loan. And the same thing with like pretty low down payment requirements as well.
You wanted to use a VA loan, which can be very powerful for a military veteran, but did it not work?
At the time, I couldn't find any VA construction loans when we wanted to build. And then I live in the mountains, and it is difficult finding like duplexes and triplexes. They're more plentiful in the Midwest where I'm originally from. Just the combination of those two, I couldn't use the VA loan.
And what really strikes me is that you decided to rent out your apartment as an Airbnb. And while doing so, you basically lived in your car for 3 months.
Yeah, I was pretty driven. I mean, I'm still pretty driven now, but yeah, I was very driven to get that money. I could have gotten the money like as a gift from family members or something, but then that just stuff gets a little dicey with like lending laws and stuff. I wanted to avoid that at the time. So
what kind of difference were you making between what you were paying in rent and what you were able to rent it out for as an Airbnb?
I mean, on top of I'd already budgeted for me to like obviously afford to live at that apartment. I think at the time I was charging on the weekends maybe like $150 a night, and then on the weekdays it was about maybe like $90 to $120 a night. That's just an apartment. Like we do way better with our cabins. But I think I was bringing in cash flowing probably about 12, probably a little more than that. Probably $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Yeah.
So you built your first cabin. You talked about getting a mentor later on. Did you have a mentor when you built your first cabin, or how did you know what to build and the way to go about it?
I had an Airbnb. I was part of a group coaching mentorship with the Airbnb stuff originally. Not necessarily a development mentor when we started building the first property. I leaned pretty hard on my GC for that, any type of information. Like I was mainly focused, my job was financing, furnishing, and designing the property. And he sort of took all care of like the nitty gritty when it came to the development piece and what to look for when we go purchase land and stuff, which, I mean, obviously after doing this for four-ish years now, I have a better understanding of what to look for land where I don't have to lean too heavily on the GC initially.
Why cabins? Why are you building cabins and focused only on new construction of cabins?
I personally believe that, but also like the research shows it that these unique houses, these unique cabins, I feel like in the next decade are going to do so much better. And right now they're doing so well. But as the market becomes more saturated and people get into this space because the returns are so great, that I think more and more people are going to be the renting side of it. More and more people are going to be wanting to rent these like unique these days where the property itself is an experience in itself. So people are coming here to like where I live to hike, or wherever you're investing, like people are coming there for the attraction of the city. But on top of that, I like to make sure that the property itself is also an experience by itself. So I call it like Instagrammable properties, where people like to put it on their social medias, and it's like built-in marketing there. I mean, we get so many reservations from people who recommend our properties on top of putting it on like places like Airbnb and VRBO.
What makes your cabins Instagrammable? What's the experience that people are getting?
A-frames are doing really well right now, investing in some sort of view. A-frames just look really cool. The barns, a lot of people are doing these, like who aren't doing new construction, they're doing some of these barn conversions into rentals. The barns do really well, just log cabins. People like to get away from the city a little bit and stay in a cabin. So even the log cabins are going to do well, say like on social media. But right now, A-frames, tree houses are doing really well. You can sort of market a house on stilts as a tree house, which I'm starting to see more and more. People are building these smaller houses on stilts and calling them tree houses, which you can actually get financing for, because it's essentially like a property on the beach, where most houses on like right on the coast are going to be on stilts. But people are taking that model, putting a property in the woods and calling it a tree house. So yeah, tree houses. We like to focus on like permanent foundation stick built homes that we can actually get financing for, like actual commercial financing for.
What's the attraction though? I mean, is it because it's like a rustic made of wood A-frame, or is there something more to it that make people say, hey, I need to put a picture of this up on Instagram?
I think it's just the design of the property. I think like what I'm seeing is people are flocking to that. And then just the inside, it's like we work with an interior designer to sort of make it a very, like it's a 900 square foot home, but if you see pictures of it, it's very spacious. And something about the tall 20 foot, 25 foot roofs, like where the walls are essentially the roof. So people like that style, is what I'm saying.
Can you take us through the economics of your first cabin? What you paid for the land, the construction, and then the type of loan you got? I think you said 10% down, and the type of profit you've been making off of it ever since.
We purchased the land for $50,000. It was about 2 acres. Land prices are way higher now, but at the time, 2 acres, $50,000. It was sort of, you have like really good winter mountain views from that cabin. And there is room to put another cabin on the property too, but $50,000 all in all, including holding costs, furnishings. We don't have a hot tub at that property right now, but furnishings, holding costs, loan costs, construction costs, everything. I would say it was about $215,000 to build, and then $50,000 for the land. So $265,000 in, and then our gross revenues was $82,000 last year on that cabin, and then our net was just over $50,000 after debt service and expenses, cleaning, everything.
So is that about a 40% expense ratio?
About, yeah, which is normal. But I mean, $52,000 net on $265,000, and we'd only put 10% of that down roughly. Furnishing costs were out of pocket, but yeah, I mean, $53,000 on $265,000.
Is that $50,000 before debt service?
No, it's after.
So what's your loan, your debt service per year on that?
I'll have to. I have the numbers right here. Let me pull those numbers. Yeah, $12,500.
So you're really looking at a $62,000 net operating income. I know it's not valued as a commercial property, but at a 10 cap, that would be a $500,000 property.
It's funny because like I try to stay away from talking about the cap rate because it's almost like I hate to use the word like unbelievable, but it's like people tend to don't believe that number when you first talk about it because of where we are, like with how crazy real estate prices are right now. But yeah, again, granted, that was built before COVID. Right now, it'd probably be closer to $300,000, $305,000 for that. But even at that number, it's still a very good investment.
Anyone who listens to this show knows that Green Property Management manages my entire West Michigan residential portfolio. They manage single families all the way up to large apartment complexes. Marty and his team are running a new special that I think is absolutely nuts. And I tried to tell him so, but he wouldn't listen to me. They want to offer new clients a $250 per unit project allowance to have their in-house licensed crew tackle any project, big or small, for for new clients. I can tell you from personal experience that their unique management style will save you money, eliminate headaches, and increase your net operating income. You add on top of that this limited time offer of $250 per unit for new clients, and it really becomes a no-brainer. So text GREEN250 to 21000 or visit them on the web at livegreenlocal.com and tell Marty I think he's gone off the deep end with this absolutely nuts $250 offer. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. What amenities do you have to have in your cabins that the people who would rent them expect to see?
We like to design the properties with both 900 square foot. The biggest one we're building right now is 1,600 square foot. Washer, dryer are going to be big. People are going to be hiking in the woods, hiking in the mountains. They want to come back and be able to clean their clothes, especially with like some of the larger projects that we're doing. We don't plan on having on-site managers. So essentially self-sustaining properties where they're designed with full kitchens, full bathrooms, full washer dryers. And then on top of that, things like we like to leave out like a free bottle of wine for the guests, anywhere between like a $5 to $10 bottle of wine. That tastes really good. Just little stuff, popcorn, bottles of water that we leave out, board games. Outside we have fire pits. And then we didn't do it with our first couple cabins, but hot tubs are fixtures that you can include into the development cost. So we plan all of our properties with hot tubs. Mountain, like I like to say, a cabin, mountain view with a hot tub. That's sort of like like when you think of like staying in a cabin, that's sort of what you think about is some sort of mountain view in a cabin in a hot tub. So,
do you have a way of quantifying how important that hot tub is to the cabin and the rental?
I would say anywhere between an extra $25 to $50 a night. I like to include as many things. So like when you go on the short-term rental sites, you can see what people like. If you go out and you go on Airbnb and you're trying to stay somewhere, you can sort of filter out there is an option for hot tub on the short-term rental sites. So I like to include as many of those amenities that are checklists for guests inside of the listing. But it is a huge draw, the hot tub. There are people who specifically look for hot tubs, like sort out properties that have hot tubs compared to not.
The cleaning and the maintenance of the hot tub, does that become an issue at all?
It is, but I would say just lean very heavily on your cleaning crew. Like I said, these are new construction properties. So it's like, at least for the first 2 to 3 years, the maintenance isn't crazy on these properties. Obviously, we have contingencies and we budget for CapEx and everything, and that's included in that number. This is the furnishings and the hot tub. But I would lean just very heavily on the cleaning crew when it comes to that, if you have to drain the hot tubs and stuff like that. So, and just allow for enough time in between guests if you're going to do that, or when you're going to do that, not if.
And if you're up in the mountains, are you on well water, city water? I mean, does it matter with a hot tub?
The houses that we design they're all on well and septic. Asheville does have city water and city sewer, but the closer you get to the city, the more expensive the properties are. We're within anywhere between 15 to 25 minutes within the city, which people who stay with us, people who come to Asheville, mountain cities in general, people are used to driving into the city. Like they have access to a vehicle, where a 15 to 30 minute drive is not too much for them. What I saw during COVID is people did move away from the metro cities to stay in more rural locations. We have a full house water filtration system where the water is probably cleaner than tap water, like in a city. So refilling the hot tubs isn't an issue. Now, if you don't have that system, like getting sediment in your hot tub and the pipes can become an issue. But if you're designing a property, just making sure that you have budgeted for a water system and somewhere to put it if you're building a smaller property.
What other tips do you have with your vacation rentals as far as keeping them full marketing to potential customers?
On the marketing side, I've become a huge believer in a company called StayFi. It's a little disc that you plug into the back of a router, and it essentially creates a landing page where people have to essentially provide their email address to be able to sign on to the Wi-Fi. And imagine like if you walk into like a Starbucks or an airport or wherever, you got to log into their Wi-Fi to be able to use it. It's the same idea. And we capture their email. We usually, the person who books the property, we already have their email in case we need to contact them on top of their phone number. But I mean, the properties that we're building now can sleep up to 10 people. Our first one could sleep 6 people. We're able to capture all of those people's emails who are using the Wi-Fi. And then maybe we push out a seasonal email. We don't bombard them with emails maybe like once every 3 months. Hey, you stayed with us. Here's the Airbnb link, just to remind them if they want to stay again or maybe next year. So on the marketing piece, that's been phenomenal, is being able to remarket to our previous guests. And then when it comes to keeping it booked up, I just really focus on a dynamic pricing model, which there are tools out there that are relatively inexpensive to be able to adjust pricing as the market shifts every single day compared to actually going in there and doing it manually.
And are you marketing through Airbnb as well and VRBO, or do you just have your own setup?
Yeah, we lean pretty heavily on Airbnb. I've put the property on VRBO. It didn't do as well as Airbnb, and I don't know if that's because maybe the demographics a little bit different for the A-frames compared to log cabins, which we are building log cabins right now too. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, mainly Airbnb and VRBO. But we do plan on doing a more direct booking model just because the fees are a little bit high when it comes to booking. Anyone who's booked through VRBO and Airbnb, their fees are exactly the same. But I mean, they'll charge about a 14 to 16% service fee to the guests alone, which if we can take some of that away in terms of maybe offering a 5 to 8% service fee to the guests compared to a 15% and charge them the same rate, like, I mean, they're just going to have an overall better experience. I mean, a good way to think about it is you only have 365 days to book. Our average stay is anywhere between 3 to 4 days, roughly. So you're only looking to find maybe 120 guests throughout the whole year for one cabin. So reoccurring guests, just like with any business, is the lifeblood of the short-term rental stuff.
What's the difference in thinking between the A-frames and the cabins?
The A-frames, I think, are geared towards more couples compared to the log cabins, which our biggest log cabin's 1,800 square foot right now. I see more families gravitate towards the log cabins than the A-frames. We do have a lot of people stay in the A-frames, but there's more storage. There's more room for kids to be running around and stuff with the log cabins. But it's also just to keep it's to provide some variety within our real estate portfolio as well when we build the direct booking side of the business, where people can have different options. If they don't want to stay in an A-frame, they can stay in a log cabin and a treehouse.
And Alex, I want to kind of circle back to something you said about you built your first A-frame. You found a mentor / coach and told him that you wanted to do 30 more of these. And he said, nope, you want to do more. You're thinking too small. Tell us what the conversation was there and what it led to.
I still work with him today. Greg Dickerson from Dickerson International. Phenomenal guy. I mean, he has insane amount of real estate development experience, and he's coached some of the real estate professionals that I look up to. I had reached out to him I had originally done his development course, but I was really looking for a one-on-one mentor because there are so many moving pieces on the development side that you can't just package into a book. Or you could, but there are so many different things that can come up and different strategies you can do. So it really helps having a mentor there to lean on when it comes to the bigger projects. But yeah, I told him, hey, my goal is 30 cabins. I figured out based off the cash flow I was receiving where 30 cabins would be. And he was like, well, you could probably plan that out in the next 3 to 4 months. And I had like a five-year goal of 30 cabins. But yeah, I mean, we just started working together, and then he sort of just taught me how to raise capital and then just how to properly work with investors. And I've leaned pretty hard on different attorneys to just help me put that together as well. But yeah, it just sort of opened my mind a little bit to what's actually possible. So right now we're focusing on the boutique resort model is what I like to call it. That's the niche I'm in now, where it's about 40 to 50 cabins at a time in a complex. And then we raise the money and then secure the financing for those. And then we have plans on being in a couple other markets after that, where we just take that exact model and sort of copy and paste it throughout different mountain communities throughout the country.
That's a lot of units in one location. What's your confidence level, or where does your confidence come from that you're able to fill those?
A market analysis, a feasibility analysis that we got done. I mean, sinking that much money into a project, like those specific analysis are expensive, and it's difficult to actually find companies that are willing to do them, because a lot of companies I talk to were trying to pull hotel comparables and sort of compare, but it's completely different. So we did find a company to help us do a feasibility analysis and like look at an absorption rate and stuff. But if people are looking to do, like, where the confidence honestly comes from is looking at, I'm constantly seeing hotels that are being built in my market. They're being passed, and we're priced just a little bit more expensive than what a normal hotel room is. But I'm pretty confident that someone will choose a house over a hotel room any day. Like, I can actually stay in a house. I have a full kitchen. It's a unique property compared to, like, I'd say, but like a boring hotel for the most part.
Are you in the cabin vacation rental business or the cabin resort business?
Right now, it's more resort, but it's the amenities, like we talked about in the beginning, are more geared towards, like, the amenities are inside of the property. So the resort is going to have like hiking trails and, say, like disc golfing, like some sort of disc golfing things, but it's not necessarily a resort in terms of what, like, people think a resort is, where it's like an all-inclusive everything. So I would say I'm in the cabin development business, but we are focusing on some of these bigger projects right now. And I mean, I'm pretty flexible with doing either or. Like, some of the joint venture agreements we have with some of our investors, we're building, say, like 6 cabins at a time with just one investor. So I'm pretty flexible with doing either or.
Are you able to talk about how you're structuring these deals with investors? Is that something you're able to discuss?
Each deal is going to be different. That bigger one, Class A and Class B shares, we're still working out the returns there, because we're just about to go under contract on a property that we've been working on for the last month or so. But the returns are just going to be different based off of if we're doing, like, say, in the syndication model compared to the joint venture model. So the joint venture model, our investors do go in and help us guarantee the loan, compared to the syndication model, where we have a sponsor sort of someone to guarantee the loan with us as well. So it's all based off of both the investors' goals and then what type of risk they're comfortable with. And anyone that reaches out to me, we can schedule a call and talk directly about that. So
this is a good opportunity to share with our listeners how they can find out more about you or get in touch with you.
SargonInvestments.com is my website, SARGON Investments with an S. That they can go through, click a little Invest Now button at the top right of our website, and then they can schedule a call, fill out the information. I'll get their email address, and then we can schedule a call together. If they're interested in doing it themselves, my YouTube channel is free. They can, I document my entire processes when it comes to finding the land, how to look for land, how to put your team together. Yeah. And then we can go from there if they decide to schedule a call and talk.
As we wrap it up, any final wisdom when it comes to vacation rentals?
It's not a new idea. That's what I tell a lot of people is short-term rentals have been around for forever. Prior to 2008, before Airbnb existed, VRBO existed, and before that, people used to pick up the phone and book directly through a company. So short-term rentals is not necessarily a new idea. It's the ease of getting into, like, being able to book a property is like because of companies like Airbnb and VRBO has made it more popular. So there's a lot of information out there, good information, that you can find either on YouTube or through reading books, that if people are looking to do it themselves, that I would say don't get too discouraged, because there is a model out there that for short-term rentals that work. And one thing we didn't really talk about was, like, rates and stuff. The rates are pretty recession resistant for the most part. Luxury property saw a little bit of a dip during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, but the rates are pretty recession resistant. And that's one of the reasons why I've sort of gravitated to short-term rentals over some other real estate classes, and then asset classes on top of that as well.
Where do you place yourself? Luxury, more rustic?
Yeah, I would say more rustic. We don't have any luxury properties. I consider luxury, like, every market's going to be different, but I would say anywhere between 700 plus a night is sort of luxury to me in my market. So yeah, sort of, and then how many people it could sleep, but none of our properties sleep more than 10 people. So I would say anything over 10 people in my market would be considered luxury.
What do you typically charge per night? What's your range?
We're a year-round market for the most part, but our hottest months are leaf season, where all the leaves change, orange, red, yellow. I can charge upwards of $400 on a weekend, like per night. And then during the weekdays, during high season, it's about maybe $300 a night. During slow season, weekdays are about $150, and then the weekends are about $225. So that's what I can charge for that current property. Log cabins, it's sort of up in the air, but our properties are bigger, so they'd probably rent for a little more than that.
Well, Alex, thank you for sharing this information on vacation rentals. It's always a popular topic on this show, and I think you've really added a new dimension to it with your cabins and your A-frame strategy. I really appreciate you sharing all the details with us. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, no, thanks for having me on, Brian. It was a blast.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's HIGinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, now offering a $250 per unit project allowance to new clients in West Michigan. Find out more at livegreenlocal.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.